allowed myself to be very flexible, very open, didn't just read coursework, read whatever came to mind. And that gave me a very large background in a variety of ideas and different ways of thinking. So when I finally got a bit serious in my life after about 17, 18, I had a very good background in being able to handle different kinds of arguments. So I found formulating arguments, reading, writing, fairly easy. And I never thought I would specialize. Although I did specialize in economics, that was just to pass exams. My interests were not specialized. So I wrote plays, I did cinema, I did history, all that. So in a sense, okay, it was not a very good way of planning a career, but it didn't hurt me because luckily life was changing around me and opportunities opened up. But I prepared myself not for a single path, but for whatever came. And it just, since reading was such pleasure, it also became very helpful. So I have written more than 50 books on a variety of topics. Whatever interests me, I write. I sit down and write about it. I find out things about it, if it's new, and then I write about it. So curiosity is the best weapon to have. You have to be infinitely curious.
Yes.
And as economists, which you're going to be, the great thing about economics is it is not experimental. It doesn't require equipment. It requires mainly observation. And economics is wherever you are. Economics is all around you. It's in your daily life, it's out on the public road, it's in your private home, it's in shops, and so you can think about economic problems in a variety of ways all the time. So as economists, one thing you have to do is to not only do all your textbooks and things like that properly, but you have to constantly apply your knowledge of economics. Let me give you one example, very simple example. We all talk about competition, okay? Now, say shops selling clothes, right? They compete with each other. But if you go to the market, they're all located together in one row. You have 10 clothes shops. So why would that be? Why would a competing shop not go, 1 mile away? Now, there was a great economist, but he was a statistician and mathematician as well, called Hotelling. And Hotelling basically made a theory that shops have to be where people are. And people are where they can find lots of shops. So the mutually satisfactory idea is that shops locate close to each other, so that if somebody doesn't go to shop X, shop Y is there. Later on, somebody used that idea to analyze democratic politics. He says in democratic politics, your parties have to oppose each other, but you have to be where the voters are. And voters are all in the middle ground. You all have to be in the middle ground. So you have to compete for the middle ground. And you don't go out to the extreme. A few people may be out there at the extremes, but the bulk of the voters are in the middle. So parties have to compete looking like each other, but not completely. And that's also true of fashion. In fashion, you have to look like somebody else, but slightly different. Your shoes have to look like Adidas, but slightly different, or Bata, but slightly different. And so this is an inside of economics. This is an inside of abstract economics, which is applicable to everyday life. So one thing you have to know as economists is economics is everywhere. There's a man called Marshall who defined economics as the study of ordinary business of life. And that's what it's all about. It's not in textbook. It's in life, and you have to be able to learn how to sort of observe economics all around you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was very inspiring. Like just you said that I used to go to another library when one library was finished. So that approach of unleashing every opportunity possible is something that we all must know, and that makes you the person you are today and inspiring all of us. So the next question would, before asking the next question, could you please switch on your videos because it would be more interactive, because this would be going online and people will see this
What do you want
ads
me to
well.
do? What do you want me to do?
Could you please switch on your video so that this
I
session could be more
absolutely
interactive?
no idea how I do it. Uh, I just switch it on and
So there was a display small camera, I thought.
I just found.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are
Is that
visible.
better?
Yes.
Yeah. You
Yes,
see
sir.
those little signs are below me. Okay, is that better? Good, right.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now,
Thank you.
so tell me, next question.
Even after having such a successful career and getting the third highest civilian award in India, which is Padma Bhushan, what was that urge that initiated the foundation of Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics?
Well, I have a serious answer. It's basically, I didn't start it. See, I have lots of students. I taught for about nearly 38 years at LSA. And some very bright students came, and they're all, well, many of them were much brighter than I am. And one of them, a man called Dr. Tushar Podar, he did a PhD at LSE, and then he went to IMF. And after IMF, he was in India as head of Goldman Sachs, he was chief economist. He had this idea, being very idealistic, that he wanted to start a liberal arts college in India, like the American college. No, he first wanted to start an LSE type college. And I said, no, English type colleges were not very good because they specialize too much. You should start the American style liberal arts college. Well, we worked on that for a while. He came to see me in London, and then he tried, and he had good Calcutta context. And we were nearly very close to starting a liberal arts college in Calcutta. But then Mamata Banerjee got the government out of bureaucratic nightmare of education. You have to have from the Mahabharata. And it was my idea to place him in the Mayan civilization. And he comes from South America to India in search of Mohenjo-daro architecture. So I wanted to kind of show that the Mahabharata could be thought of as something which happened really, but then I connected it with the global development because people don't think of India of Mahabharata's time being placed in the whole world. So I joined it with the Mayan civilization. And then I enjoy writing that very much. I did it during the pandemic. So I really enjoy writing. And I don't really care whether people read it or not. I do not like writing. So I wrote it, and then it is out there. But Krishna is my favorite character. He's my favorite character in all epics because he is very shrewd, he's very cunning. He is God, but he lies and he cheats, and he's fantastic. A fantastically human God. So I like it. I like it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Just like you said that I love reading and your books, people love reading as well. And just like you said, your favorite character was Lord Krishna, who was a motivator and inspirer, a leader for everyone. Similarly, you are the one, the postal of strength and intellect for the today's generation and for all of us. And with that, I would like to ask this next question for my side, which is, it's an absolute honor for us as Indians that this year G20 summit will be taking place in India, and our honorable Prime Minister will be chairing the same, Mr. Narendra Modi. What's your take how the economic and financial agenda of this summit will impact the Indian economy?
But, a summit of G20 goes around by rotation. There are 20 countries, so every 20 years a summit comes around. And summits are basically things which happen among diplomats who meet in the headlines. Now, I know in India there's a huge pride that G20 has come to India. India is at last being recognized as one of the big countries. G20 actually is supposed to be a technical group which had to do with the economic crisis which was caused way back in 2008. And the French President Sarkozy was supposed to be the chairman of G7, much more. But he decided that that was the last summit, so he expanded it to G20 to satisfy his thing. So every time we meet since then. Now, I don't think that a conference like that, at least in my view, has much economic benefit to a large economy like India. It's good for Indian national pride. It's good for Indian experience for Indian foreign relations experts and other experts and so on. And you're doing something at a global level. But ultimately, it's a technical operation. Like, for example, some groups have to discuss the debt situation of poor countries, and right now there is a big debt crisis. There's a crisis in Sri Lanka, crisis in Pakistan, and so on. So, under what conditions those IMF and World Bank and other people can alleviate crisis, or crisis of energy prices? There's, of course, right now the political problem of Ukraine, which is interfering. And if you know that the communique could not be released because Russia and China were not agreed on the war being mentioned as part of the final communique. So there was no final communique issued from Bangalore for the financial expert. Now the heads of government are still to come in September. So G20 is not yet over. It's an all year long festival. I think it's good for India, but it's not going to make much difference to the Indian economy. It's a sideshow. Indians will have to get used to the fact that India is a very big economy, and these things have not happened before. But the way Indian economy, Indian political movement, or whatever it is, they wasted about first 40 years in bad growth policies, in my view. So India really only started growing since 1991, but it has a long distance to make up. It had fantastically talented people, but it has suffered through lots and lots of bad economic thinking. But there we are. It will catch up. So, but G20 is a good thing, but it is not it's egged in Sultan. It is not the end of the world, or even the beginning. Oh. Take it in your stride and say, oh, these things happen all the time. We are used to this.
Thank you, sir. It was very insightful. And seeing things through your lens has been an honor for us since you have decades of experience over us. Okay, so moving on. A question I have for you is, so in your book, The Rediscovery of India, you discussed the political and economic challenges that India faced then. So what changes do you see in the current economic and political sphere that you think should be highlighted?
Well, let's separate the question in two parts. First of all, Rediscovery of India was written was published in 2009, nearly 15 years ago. And I wrote that because the way I had grown up, there was too much Congress praising in the way history was written. As it were, Congress single-handedly delivered independence, and all due to Gandhi, this and Nehru that, and so on. And I thought this was just, a trivial way, not a trivial, but a very peculiar way of writing. That only one team was batting, and that team, won all the matches. And of course, I knew much more, but I had access to British libraries and I read a lot myself. So I want to write a corrective to the way the Congress history was written. And since I was not a professional historian, nobody is going to stop me from doing anything. I didn't need a fellowship or a grant to write. I just wrote in my own time. And I immensely enjoyed writing it because I could go to the real original sources sitting in the House of Lords Library. For example, there's something called Simon Commission. Now, if you read Indian histories, Simon Commission came, but Congress boycotted it and nothing happened, and then, And then the Simon Commission is a 6-volume report, one of the most detailed. You want to find out how India was in 1920s, you go read the Simon Commission report, which nobody has read, except maybe me and 2 others. And so I had to correct all that sort of nonsense. So I wrote about not only just the contribution independence movement, but the way the British government handled the thing. There were other parties going on, the Muslim League. After the partition happened, and nobody could prevent it. So I had to explain to myself. And of course, then since independence, I thought there were a lot of failures of really the great Prime Minister Nehru and other people. So I had to more or less explain to myself. So the rediscovery of India is, as it were, not quite an answer to Nehru's discovery of India, but it was my rediscovery of India because I had to sort of rearrange my mind as precisely what happened because I couldn't believe what they were telling me had happened. So it was my corrective, and a lot of people have found it troubling and made them think, and I like that because I want to make people think about what they take for granted. I want to make them inquiring, inquisitive, worried, questioning, and that is the purpose of the book. But I've stopped in 2009, so I've not said anything about the changeover from UPA to BJP. I'm not writing another volume. I'm writing other books.
Yes, sir. I agree to everything you said. And getting this first-hand information from a person who has seen the whole evolution is such a useful thing for me and all of us, as we can get the detailed information from the time when we were not even present on Earth. You can say that. Hmm.
Being old helps.
Yes.
I can't afford being old, so there you are.
Yes.
You can take some advantage.
Mhm. So my next question would be, do you think parity in caste hierarchies in India can fetch an economic evolution with fewer political differences and more economic opportunity?
Sorry?
Should I repeat my question?
Yeah, please.
Do you think parity in caste hierarchies in India?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I think basically caste is the most insidious and difficult thing to as it were, fight. What I say in the rediscovery is basically if you look at Indian history, old Indian history, let's say the Hindu history of India, India has very few large empires, unlike China. China always has had an empire from Beijing, more or less around the country, except for a few periods. And so China always had the idea of being a single country, single language, more or less a homogeneous race of the Hans. There are a few other minority people. India is like Europe. India is a collection of countries. So I know people don't like things. India is basically huge when you think about it. It has more languages than any other area of comparative size. It has more languages than Europe. Now, how do you keep a society like that together, which doesn't have a overpowering political authority. No king, no emperor, nothing. Here they come and go. They kind of last over 200 years, Mauryas and Guptas and all that. And they go away and somebody else comes. So my theory is that a caste system was created to maintain social equilibrium without political order. It is a self-propelling thing because, in a sense, in economics we use the word endogenous and exogenous. It is an endogenously adjusting system because everybody in the system thinks or is told to think that this is for not just this life, but for many more lives. So you better behave yourself and you better obey dharma. What dharma is to respect the status of the social equilibrium. And caste rules are out there. And so basically the caste system was, I think, created to maintain social equilibrium. But that means that inequality is a part of the system. And it is unavoidable because it is a lifetime thing. You're born in a particular caste and you're not going to get out of it forever. You can't promote yourself by hard work. Your initial conditions are your terminal conditions, so no progress is possible. And I think that is a very, very debilitating thing. You can never have equality. Psychologically, you never have equality. And individually, you're convinced that there is no progress in life. Now, despite all that, I think India has done well because the shock of Western contact is what changed, what challenged some of the notion of equality in India comes only with Western colonialism, which is very paradoxical. But so I think because most people writing history, writing philosophy, were Brahmins or ethnic Kshatriyas. They obviously love the caste system. But if you look at the Dalit literature, people like Phule and Ambedkar and so on, they immensely resent the caste system. You go south of India, and the whole Dravid movement was very anti-Brahmin because they just didn't want to be bossed over. But so from the perspective of the lower castes, lower groups, lower jatis, there are problems. Now, one thing which democracy has done in India is it has given the other backward castes a much higher presence in our lives, thanks to Mandal Commission and all that. And they're much more visible. They can have their own political parties, the Yadav parties or the Kurmi parties or the Kushwahas and whatever it is. And that is the achievement of Western-style democracy impacting on a traditional Hindu caste system. And I know there are people who more or less want to have caste system reaffirmed and so on, and I don't. But I think in a sense, one has to understand that even in India, even the communist parties and socialist parties in India are very caste-ridden because very often the leadership was with the Brahmins. And it is just one of those things. So I think caste is a very powerful system and very hard system to abolish. And for example, the Congress Party, while it was in power for the first, whatever it is, 70 years after, about 60 years after independence, never ever challenged the caste system. Never ever challenged the caste system. And every chief minister of UP was a Brahmin when Congress was in power. It's only later on that the OBC people have been visible. So I think caste is very powerful. We know why it is powerful, but it'll have to go because it is actually a great barrier to the progress of the lower groups.
Okay, so as you've said, of course, caste system is going to be very hard to be abolished. But at some point, we just have to realize that it's something that's really bad for a country and for a society, because it is not something that is helping us grow, except it's standing in the between of our growth, because we are dividing the opportunities, which is which in my opinion is not a good thing. So
Well, the thing, I remember once somebody saying that he joined the foreign service, and he obviously a very bright chap. He said he had two senior people talk to each other and said, "Have you met this new recruit so and so?" He said, "Yes, I have." He said, "But what caste is he? I can't talk to him till I know what his caste is." Now, when who is that kind of attitude? Should I be respectful to him? If he's a Brahmin, I have to be. But if he's not a Brahmin, I don't have to be. Those kinds of deeply ingrained uh, habits uh, are still there. Let's face it. I mean, some of the criticism the prime minister gets, it still sticks in people's gut that he is an OBC. Let's face it. They absolutely, they think that they have been born with the privilege of being Brahmins and being top dogs, and how dare this Chaiwala's son come and become a prime minister of India? What has he done? Who is he? What was his father? Nothing. And that kind of attitude has to go.
absolutely, sir, absolutely. So wrapping up, I only have one last question for you. Since you're
Sure.
a professor of economics, sorry, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sir, since you are a professor of economics and you have economics as one of the main undergraduate fields at a college, what is the one thing that you would like to advise our students who want to excel in this subject?
Well, my view is, as I was saying before,
But sir, still, is there some
economics has to be treated. Of course, you have to treat it like an academic subject. You got to pass exams and so on. But you have to treat it as a something you go on using to observe the world. It's very, I mean, there's a great economist called Gary Becker, who's a professor at Chicago, won a Nobel Prize. And he has economics of marriage and economics of child rearing. And people to begin with said, what nonsense? Why should economics be? When parents have children, they're not maximizing utility. And but he carefully showed how, as people get better off, they have fewer children because they want to bequeath the children a better future. And the cost of children having a good career has to be factored in the decision to how many children you're going to have. So in poorer cultures, people have lots of children because they're worried about infant mortality anyway. But they don't really care. They're not going to give any more to the children and just have them there and then they manage it. Now, as people get more prosperous, they be more careful. They want quality education and quality life, and they want to pass on a good prospect. Now, that's an economic issue. And you can formulate it economically if you're careful with your theory and economics of marriage and divorce, economics of a lifetime choice of insurance or property or thing like that. So economics is there all the time. So economics is not just big questions of national income and GDP and all that. It's also about daily life, about individual life or group life, or decisions to what to buy, where to live, and what career to have. All those are economic decisions. And you have to be able to use your economics in that way. So one advantage of being an economic student is that you can do economics all the time. But just have your eyes and ears open, your brains sharp, then you can learn a lot about economics.
Yes, economics is now a very essential thing because finance and data analytics things are very much growing these days, and So this aspect of the thing is very much important. This would be the last question from my side, and my I really wanted to ask this question. In the journey of becoming one of the most influential name in the history, what do you like to quote any accomplishment or a project that you particularly feel proud of in your entire life?
And I always say my next one. Uh, it's not, the game is not over yet. Uh, and, I was basically, you know, let's see what, for example, the book I've currently written, I didn't know I was going to write. I wrote it in the pandemic, and I surprised myself that I wrote it. So you never know.
Yes.
You always have to hope for some progress in life until you finally kick the bucket, because then of course there's no more left. But I think I hope that I can go on doing new things, better things, learning new tricks, and you'll never stop. Okay.
Yes.
So
Thank.
any other questions?
No.
You're all happy?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
I also sent written answers to your questions. I've just sent corrected with all the typos corrected uh, just before we started. So thank you very much, and have a nice life and a prosperous career, and do good things.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, it was
Okay.
truly wonderful. Yes, sir.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Okay. Cheers.
Hmm.
Very nice of you to have accommodated all my troubles. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
I don't know how this. Ah, okay.
Go.